So Bob, when we first launched the podcast, I remember you reaching out.
Great handlebar mustache, that guy. So yeah.
Oh, he does. That handlebar mustache is famous. So that's fun. No, I had a lot of time working with you guys, and you were the only doctor I've ever worked with that has done exams in tuxedo pants. I don't know if they were tuxedo pants, but they look like them to me, and it, it and I don't say that to laugh, and I mean it's kind of funny, but what I learned from you is all the details. You picked up on so many, or like you were aware of tiny little small details, and the bigger impression that would make. And that was one of the things that I remember taking away from my time working with you, and one of the things many things I learned, but just people say don't sweat the small stuff, but sometimes it's the small stuff that really is the big stuff. And whether it's describing a frame to a patient or some of the little details that you would explain in the exam to the patient, or even just noticing, a small little piece of paper that got kicked in the corner and picking it up, right? But it matters. It all adds to the bigger impression. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of OCD, man. When I interview opticians now, and they'll do a working interview, and we pay them, and I'll purposely throw stuff on the floor, to see if they'll actually pick it up or not. It's a pretty raw test, but it's something that shows a lot about them, and see if they're going to go ahead and pick something like that up. But yeah, the details are important, not the tuxedo stripes. I mean, those were just ridiculous. But when my mom told me, about her eye doctor, she said, I only remember really two things about him: his breath smelled terrible, and he wore great socks. So I always have great socks on, and I eat about a tin of Altoids a day. So I try to go ahead and represent. But no, it's important. I mean, from everything from, the details that you notice in terms of what they're wearing, what bag they're carrying, in terms of, everything about them, their outfit, and, even how they smell, how the office smells, So at that time, I think we just got like scent air, and we wanted to create like this experience of almost walking in, to the Venetian hotel, where you kind of just never forget that customized smell of kind of what that's like. So everything from coffee, out in front, and water, and me coming out to serve it, I think is a pretty big deal. Like, well, the doctor's out there offering me coffee. I still do it to this day. But yeah, the details are important because you learn a lot about the patient while you're interacting with them, whether it's what they do for a living, what their hobbies are, how you're going to be able to sell multiple pairs to meet their needs and really take care of them. So I usually tell my externs, listen, I don't want to tell you to write down all the clinical diagnoses and things that we review. I just write down a lot of the stuff that I say that I've learned, over the years. I said, and there's going to be sometimes I just don't know. And you and I are going to work on this together, and we're going to go ahead and look this up in Will's Eye Manual or whatever else you guys have now. And we'll figure it out. I don't have all the answers, but we'll figure it out together. So.
Definitely. Well, it left an impression. In fact, I think it left an impression on the community, because I remember early on, before you had security gates, somebody broke in to steal the TV, and they actually removed the cushions off the couch when they stood on the couch. They took the TV, but they didn't mess up the cushions.
He was very kind. That was the second break-in in 24 hours. I can't believe you remember that. So then I had, I don't know if you remember, but I had to sleep on the couch with a baseball bat for a couple of nights because we had dogs there, and the dogs were really expensive, and they messed up the office. And so we couldn't afford, major security until we found Gilbert, a 350-pound security guard that sat there until we got the shutters installed. But so we had we had to do what we had to do to protect the place, because we couldn't hire security to go ahead and watch it. But that's a good memory. He did it in broad daylight, at 8:00 in the morning, and we had it all on video. He skipped right down the sidewalk, holding the TV on his shoulder like it was nothing. It was crazy.
Yeah. It was that was good times, and I think anybody who owns a business, it has, hopefully not similar stories, but that we've all got our stories of having to roll the sleeves up and do the crazy things.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about, for those who don't know you, and I mean, in Chicago and ICO, you're legend. You're the Bob Steinmetz, and it's you may shake your head no, but that's a good thing, right? It's super cool. But tell us a little bit about your background into where you grew up. You obviously went to ICO, opening the practice, and then how you got into what you're doing now with Eye Care Advisors.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, thanks for the kind words. I mean, I think it's more memorable because of the tuxedo pants and ridiculous outfits more than anything. But I was fortunate to have a lot of mentors along the way in my career, and one of them was my uncle, who was an optometrist out in the suburbs here of Chicago. Just a pioneer, out of the box kind of a thinker. He ended up putting in a laser in his private optometry practice to have ophthalmology come in and actually perform LASIK surgery. And I got to move his office and got to observe him and his family life, and just what an amazing, father and uncle he was. And I said, you know what, this is really kind of something I really want to get into. I love medicine. I love kind of the fashion aspect of it. And so I grew up on the south side of Chicago. ended up living with my mom in optometry school. It's pretty awesome, but I still took out, the full boat of loans because I
Yeah.
wanted to buy nice, tuxedo pants and then go hang out downtown. But I decided in fourth year that I was a president of student association, and we were just having a lot of external forces, kind of crashing down on us about how we really couldn't go out into private practice on our own, and we really need to take the corporate route for a short period of time or do a residency. And it was one of these things where I just wanted to prove it could be done. I had no money. I had, the third highest loan debt in my class. I opened the first practice, for $93,000. It was in 485 square feet. We just had to get the doors open. And so, yeah, back then I didn't really have an option. I did a lot of, do it yourself kind of things. I used to be in the electricians union, so I was able to do some of that work there and, made a ton of mistakes, man. I mean, the mistakes we made were crazy. Buying equipment that was used and buying things and from dealers that were irreputable, that were doing these deals in international waters to try to get discounts on some things. And so what ended up happening was the practice grew pretty quick, and
Yeah.
so ended up moving to a bigger location, opening solo eye care down in Michigan Avenue. And the entire time, I just wanted to prove that, private practice was a possibility, that you could actually do it, even with very little funding and little funding. And I didn't have an angel investor or anything like that, and just bootstrapped it. And so there were times, 2 years in, I only had a few grand, in my bank account. I tell clients that now, they think it's ridiculous, but I didn't know any better. This is kind of how I grew up, and it was just one of these things I kind of had to do. And so what we did is we originally just tried to help others, get exposed to cold start optometry, and that you could actually make this happen. And now, you fast forward, several years later, we have 5 solo eye care practices and also 8 other practices in the suburbs, so a total of 13, all of which 2 were cold starts. And we saw a need in the market. And, my business partner, Dr. Boss, who's absolutely incredible, he's more of the brains of the operation than anybody. And we got together and we were seeing a lot of the same questions coming to both of us over and over. Because I was involved at the school, as you know, and
Yep.
Eric was teaching at the school. And, we'd get all these individuals coming to us and say, listen, I've, signed a terrible lease. I've bought all this equipment. I have a loan that's X amount of dollars, and I need you to help. And at that point, we honestly, we just couldn't unring the bell. We couldn't. People were out there just doing it themselves, or they were out there with some consulting advice that was really poor. I mean, there was a lot of consultants at that time taking points on the loan,
Hmm.
taking kickbacks from equipment vendors, you name it, frame vendors, everything. It was a wild west. And so we decided, what, we're going to do the opposite, and we're just going to kind of change the game. And so we ended up, starting Eye Care Advisors, thinking we would start in the Chicagoland market and slowly expand. And because both of us obviously were still in practice and teaching, and it ended up growing, and now we've got over 300 of these things across the country. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, we're very blessed to have that happen to us. It's a great team. It's a lot of fun, and it's been a pretty wild ride. So it's every day. It's a ton of fun to go to work.
That's cool. It's been fun to watch, and I've had the pleasure of having some of my classmates and close friends open cold work through you guys, and seeing some others locally here in San Diego and across. What I loved about, just from a third party perspective, watching what you guys do, is that it's not a cookie cutter, right? Because all these practices have their identity, and they all have different dreams and goals and wishes. And I think the worst thing we do when somebody's thinking about starting a practice or starting a new business, whatnot, is to rain on their parade. Tell them you can't do this, you can't do that. And I don't see that with you guys now. I think you give sound advice. There's some equipment and toys maybe you don't need right out of the gate, but it's how do we help you get what you want, not how do I help you fit the box that makes me look better. And like you said, there's tons of consultants out there, lots of great ones, but I think that is one of the differentiators that I've seen with Eye Care Advisors and knowing you and knowing Eric. Just your personalities. It's not about us making us look good. It's about us helping you achieve your dreams. And the success of these practices has been really undeniable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty humbling. I appreciate the kind words, but Yeah, it's one of these things where, the program's changed over time. It's really different from when we started almost 10 years ago to what we are now. It's entirely different. We kind of have to change with the times as more new programs come out there, as more new pieces of equipment and technology come on the market, as loan rates change and lease rates change. We have to evolve with them. Different, lines programs change, insurance changes, and so we're constantly evolving. And we're in the trenches. I mean, we're seeing patients on a day-to-day basis. Everyone on our team is cold started, and we understand the challenges that our cold starts face on a daily basis. But not all of them practice the same way we do. They have a unique mission, and we have to align their mission with their equipment choices to make sure they're going to get an ROI, to make sure they have an optical collection that's cultivated by our optician that helps them select all those frames. It's probably the first time they've ever been in the optical since, they were in dispensing in like fourth
Yeah.
year. So, it changes for each one. And, we try to have a lot of independent, design instead of, looking at frame boards and other types of just kind of cookie cutter type imagery in the outside. And,
Yep.
we're fortunate that it's kind of, design is modernized quite a bit. So we've been able to, follow along with those trends and save clients a lot of money on their build out and making sure that, we're not getting sucked in by companies that are putting in, too many things and displays and millwork and along those lines. So, but yeah, it's a ton of fun. Everybody's a little different. They're from all over the country,
Oh
all
yeah.
different situations, man. I mean, it's pretty crazy. We had one meeting where, five of our clients were pregnant and about to open, within the next, 6 to 9 months. But I mean, these women are unbelievable. I'm like, you guys are pregnant here. You're ready to open. Sometimes a couple of weeks after they deliver. It's wild. I mean, it's the courage it takes is incredible. It's not for everybody, but it's been a great experience. We learned something new, from every single client that we've opened from start to finish, and it's we try to take that and kind of apply it to the next one.
In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being. Absolutely. So you mentioned a ton of changes, and I agree with you. The industry's changed. Our scope has changed. The new equipment, different groups and whatnot. The people have changed, and I want to pick your brain a little bit about this because certainly your uncle's generation, my dad's generation, looked a whole lot different than your and my generation coming out of optometry school, which looks a whole lot different than the current generation coming out. And I remember not too long after school sitting in conferences and listening to guys like Jason Dorsey talk about, millennials and these damn millennials, and they're entitled, and what are they going to do with, how are we going to deal with them in business? Well, the youngest millennials are 43. They're kind of middle management right now. But the Gen Zs that we talk about, and I like to think of more of in my, as my kids, but they're 27, 28. Right? They're the ones out of school looking to open businesses. They're not the new hires anymore. They've been in business for a little bit. So you've had a chance with a lot of the cold starts to get a chance to work with the newer generation, right? They grew up different. Coming out of optometry school, they look different. The diversity is just blown up completely from even when I was in school, which is a fantastic thing. So what are some of the things that you're seeing that maybe guys like me and my dad and your uncle, don't really appreciate about this younger group that's coming up and becoming the next face of optometry?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed even in the time, that we've been in business. And, you go back to looking, when I opened, we bought a piece of equipment that was used where the hydraulic fluid leaked all over the floor. And I literally, I remember, going back and thank goodness my optician's brother worked at a hospital and knew how to repair this stuff and came in after hours and we gave him a case of beer and he fixed it for us, which was awesome. But I had to use phone books. Like literally they had made phone books. Aaron, there was a time where they actually published phone books. I don't know if you remember this, but
I remember
like
phone books.
they like we had to use two. There was white pages and there was a yellow pages. So there were two different ones and like the companies were forced to print them by law for some reason. And so we literally never opened them, obviously, but used them. I actually
Uh-huh.
had an ad in the phone book, though, and the name started with an A because we thought we'd be at the top. And then I remember going to like lectures where they're like, listen, you tell every one of your staff that they need to circle the name of the practice in the phone book. That way, in case anybody needs eye care, they're immediately going to go to the one that was
That's
circled, not the
circled.
bold one, but circle it. So whether they're at I remember clearly, like whether they're at the ice arena or whether they're just simply picking up a pizza. You want to go ahead and have them circle your name every time they're waiting. I'm like, this is wild. So it's come a long way. And so when you look now, technology is really important. Obviously, our clients
Mhm.
are very well connected, but they're connected in different ways. And so we've really leaned on a lot of technology because we do have a lot of clients that spend a lot of time. They're full time, and so the program is at their pace. We're there all the time for any time they want to call us. There's no like rigid schedule or connect with us or email. We use this program called Asana, which sets up
Mhm.
everything for them step by step all the way through that they can work through at any time of the night. And then Slack is incredible. I mean, text messages change things, but we have a group Slack where they can reach any member of the team at any point in time. Even at 2 in the morning, we'll be answering it. We've got 10 members of the team that are constantly answering questions on the fly. And this generation wants things yesterday. It's that simple. And, we're here to provide that. And Eric and I kind of feed off of that. Unfortunately, we try to respond within seconds and it's disruptive to our life, but it's important to the clients. I know, but, it's been very different in terms of their reliance on technology compared to where it was in the beginning, where we sent out a lot of Word documents and used a lot of Dropbox, and now everything's very automated and then customized to their specific mission based on our responses in Slack. So, yeah, it's a definitely different time from when I opened for sure.
Oh, big time. Sounds like some things are similar, right? The community and the engagement. Somebody came up with the idea of circling name in the phone book, and I remember hearing that at a lecture, um, and then looking around and being like, phone book. In fact, I had to explain what a phone booth was to my kid because they saw one the other day, and you have to do what for a phone? Um, it we don't think about this, but the iPhone came out basically when I graduated ICO.
Wow.
I mean, my kids have grown up with the silly thing in their hand. In fact, they were given an iPad in kindergarten to for school. It's completely different. So the connectivity, the influence model, the ability to get information is way different. Coming out of school, it wasn't. We went to conferences to get the information.
Yeah.
Now I can watch it, my pajamas on a Saturday morning, or get it on demand or whatnot. I'm curious because you've got now all these cold starts and docs that are involved, and you talked about the connectivity through the different channels. How much do they rely on each other and pitching ideas back and forth, and asking for help and offering help?
Yeah, I think you know, to me, there's just no replacement to, in-person human
Mm-hmm.
connectivity, person to person. I do all the deals. I love handshake deals. I like to look people in the eye, see exactly what they're all about. The community now is different. I mean, there's a lot of value provided, I think, in online communities, specifically when it comes down to cases about different eye diseases and things like that. I think we saw that a lot when, optometrists got together on Facebook years ago. And I think that that's important to be able to bounce a few things off. But you have to kind of consider the source, I think, when you
Mm-hmm.
look at that in terms of, if they speak for a certain company or, if they have an alternative agenda or if they're lonely and just spend all day on that. I
Yeah.
think, COVID taught us a lot. Yeah, I was one of the crazy. I was one of the first patients with COVID in Chicago. We're pretty close to Chinatown, and we got like a letter and noticed that conjunctivitis was a preliminary symptom, and so I was locked in for 19 days, and it was rough. I didn't know what was going on. They were telling people to drink bleach then and take hydroxychloroquine. We didn't know anything. My
Yeah.
wife just said, "Just get the hell away from all of us. Don't get anywhere near us." And but you go back to COVID, and you look at I mean, the studies done about people that were just locked in and were exclusively online. I mean, incredible amount of depression and anxiety, and just, you know, human beings require, contact with other human beings.
Hmm.
And you look back to like even, gosh, I mean, I took a class in college and it was evolutionary medicine. It's an awesome class, and it made a lot of sense. It's like, okay, why are people afraid of heights? It's like, okay, well, those people that are afraid of heights were less likely to fall off a cliff and die. Okay,
Yep.
so those genes just kind of continued on in the population, and so once babies develop depth perception, after crawling for a few months, they're avoiding, heights. They don't want, they just get
Yeah.
it, So you look at the same thing with like human interaction. They crave one-on-one interaction. One, it's more likely to develop social relationships. You can, look at cues in terms of, looking at eye contact and expressions and things like that. And one, it also, back then, it was more likely that your genes were going to continue on in the population. You can't do that, online. Or you couldn't even do it during COVID in person because you couldn't see your face. You couldn't
No.
see your face. And so you look at the difference between the two. There's so much more you can get out of these personal interactions and online meetings where you get full collaboration instead of having to wait, for continuing affirmation of what you're typing in there. And, studies have shown too, I mean, online, communication creates actually a lot of anxiety. There's bullying, there's a lot of fear, and then people
Hmm.
go down rabbit holes and things like that. And so it can create a lot of things that we don't want. I mean, mental health is really important, obviously, in our society right now. So I think in-person interaction, there's no replacement for that. And
No.
there is supplements that you can have on the social media side and also in group chats. But in terms of one-on-one interaction, there's no way around that. It's just something that humans crave.
Uh, Agree 100%. What I think is interesting, and I haven't seen a study on it, haven't looked for one, but just from my perspective, it the virtual interaction, the social interaction works really well when we have a personal trust and understanding. I mean, I know you, I know who you are, I know where you come from. So if you're going to respond back to something I say or post or a question I pose, I know where it's coming from.
Right.
Whereas Joe Smo, I got no idea who that guy is, right? And so the to your point, the anxiety's higher, right? So maybe a critique back, I may be reading it as a critique. His intention may be different, but I've got no idea what that is. And so, fight or flight, human development, I'm going to almost always look worst case scenario to try to protect myself. And so if you don't have that individual trust, individual relationship, personal relationship ahead of time, I think it does create some challenges. And my imagine even in a community like yours, not everybody has met each other personally, but there's a foundational understanding that they all have because they're all part of eye care advisors. They've gone through the process. They know you guys, and so even then, that's not as good as a in person, but certainly a higher level of trust because they're part of a group and been vetted, if you will. So there's more of a trust back and forth.
Oh, absolutely. I think that those are all really valid points. I mean, you have to consider the source and everything. I mean, we're in the medical profession. I mean, we need peer-reviewed research behind our decision making. We
Mm-hmm.
also, need solid evidence that's going to support certain suggestions, and we try to provide our clients, with that, through a lens of, yes, we've already vetted these individuals because we have all these things in our practice. I mean, we deal with this on a day-to-day basis, and when you go back and you look at, local meetings, I mean, I've been involved in politics for a really long time, and it really takes someone. I mean, look at the Iowa caucuses that are coming up, so, people caucus still,
Yeah.
and our local meetings at like a level for the Optometric Society. I mean, that's how we got things done. I mean, that's how we passed kindergarten examination laws and oral legislation. And that can't all have been organized online. You need to actually show up to fundraisers and give checks and things like that. And, so it's a little bit of a different, I think, time now than it was before. I mean, look at, you can't get catfished in person. I mean, I went
No.
to Notre Dame, Manti Te'o. I mean, if anybody's watched the documentary, it's crazy. But I mean, Manti Te'o, great guy, really intelligent individual. But I mean, he was catfished online, and I was in Alaska this summer. I actually found out what that meant. I didn't know, but like, so we went fishing. I took with my boys and my wife. We went fishing, and we were catching cod off of Alaska. And they were explaining that the cod, when they ship them to overseas, they used to put them in like these giant tanks, And by the time the cod got there, they were just all mushy and kind of just, it just didn't taste very good. So they started putting catfish inside of the tanks, and the catfish would just rile up all the cod and
Mhm.
snip at their like fins, and they kept them alive for a lot longer. So when the cod got there, they tasted a lot better. And so
Hmm.
that's where catfishing. I had no idea until
Well, I hadn't
we were in
either.
Alaska. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So catfish like pretending to be a cod, and when you get online, it can cause a lot of anxiety on certain threads and things along those lines. And so I think that personal interaction and touch, that's why telehealth is not the
Mm-mm.
future. You still need that one-on-one patient care. You need the laying on of the hands and things along those lines. It can't possibly replace that. There's certainly a place for it in rural communities where people are indigent and don't have access to that kind of care. I think that's one positive that came out of COVID. But there's nothing that's ever going to replace the personal interaction from patient to doctor for sure.
Oh, definitely. And it reminded me, I think it was last year, there was a bunch of news articles about an influencer that had, over $1 million or million people following her on whether it was TikTok or whatnot, set up a meet and greet and no one came. And so just the value we place on different things. And I think that the value of community, real in person community, is important. And the I don't know if you know John Acuff. He actually spoke at the. I met him because he spoke at the one of the keynotes at the Vision Source Exchange meeting this last year, and loved it because he resonated well with me. So I went and read a couple of his books, and in his latest book, he proposes a task or not a task, but an activity where you just start writing your best moments. So what are the best moments in life? And you write them down, and then you go back and categorize them as either an activity, or rather an experience, an accomplishment, a relationship, or an object. And so I went through and did mine, and objects were very low in his book. He talks about how objects are low. He also mentions that not a single one of his best moments had anything to do with social media. And notice mine too. At the time, maybe I post something and I get a bunch of likes, or it goes viral and I get 1,000 people to view it. But none of that really mattered at the end. It was all, for me, everything was relationship and in doing something with someone, which I think is different than sometimes what we like to think, because I'm tied to this silly little phone, and I'm tied to a response that I got to make, or I posted a picture and I got to see who likes it or whatnot. Or I'm worried about what somebody that I've never met thinks about, replied in a comment to something that I posted.
Yeah, no, and I'm pretty hands off. Unfortunately, I missed that millennial. I didn't know I was so close, man. 43. I really kind of use it for very limited circumstances, but a lot of our clients do, and that's one of the reasons we've got other members of our team, working on those things to make sure they're getting the information that we need. But we're so accessible that it's really simple, for them to
Mm-hmm.
get a hold of us. And but even like I just went to Academy for the first time in a while, and it's amazing, to see where the profession's going and how much can be learned at the bar at these meetings. It's amazing about new ideas coming up for studies and things along those lines. And there's a lot of things that come out of, I'm on a bunch of different, email groups with orthokeratology and myopia control, and a lot of cool things to be learned. But all this real work really gets done at a lot of these academy meetings and other meetings for political reasons to advance the profession, but also to advance the science behind what we're doing. I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how much work gets done at the bar when we're not supposed to be working?
It's, I tell every student, I said, listen, don't, I said, guys, you're in class all the time. I said, you wear your name tag, you go to the bar. I said, you find somebody that's from your state or your town and you start a conversation. I said, this is your first 4 years here. They're spent trying to achieve your ultimate goal,
Yeah.
and is your ultimate goal working in corporate practice? Maybe it is, and a lot of it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking to find a private practice job, Don't be in the classroom. Be at the bar. Be at the bar. That's where the action happens. That's where you get to
Yeah.
meet people and look at their name tags and find out exactly where they're from and reach out to them and have that human interaction because that's going to tell you a lot about their personality. The best clinicians I ever had, it just their personalities were enormous, and it really shows when we get some of these clients that we just know. I mean, they're going to absolutely kill it. Absolutely
Hmm.
kill it. I mean, we obviously had all the success rate's incredible, but it's one of these things where I don't like to I like to invest in myself. I would
Hmm.
say so. Like you go back to the student thing, everyone is invested in themselves. They've taken out an incredible amount of loans. That's an investment in yourself. And so people that are cold starting a private practice, that's betting on yourself. And what's a better bet than that?
Yeah.
Whether it's a stock or by invest in some scam real estate thing or whatever. I mean, if you bet on yourself, you've got full control of that. And
Yep.
and that's why I love our clients. I mean, if I were to just say, hey, listen, money is not important to me right now, I would, and if I was unethical, I would say, listen, I'll provide all these services for free. And I just want 5% of your practice because I believe in you that much. And I will coach you throughout this entire thing. And I believe in you because I invest in people.
Yep.
It's just one of these things where I've seen them do so well that the money isn't important. But we want to see independent, optometry thrive. I can't tell you how many venture capital firms are like, this model is amazing. I'd love to buy the whole company and let's go ahead and take pieces of these practices and then we'll roll them up and flip them. And it's like, this is not what we're all about. I mean, we came into this because we want to see private practice continue to survive and thrive. And that's one of the reasons we don't use, that model. But I would do it in a second because I can control that. I know who I'm betting on. So not to go off on a tangent, but catfish and whatever. But it's just one of these things where I think it's one of the reasons why people got into the profession is they want to be able to help their local community and see patients and be able to practice the way they want to practice. And a lot of that I think goes back to just starting in school and meeting the right people, kind of like you did. I mean, just
Yep.
randomly.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I love the investing in yourself. I also love the idea of being honest with yourself. It's it's interesting. I get a lot of students from ICO, and I always ask them why they went into optometry. And they give me the standard answer of I like to help people and I want to make a difference, and very altruistic type of answers. And so I'll ask them again. I said, no, that's great, but be honest with me.
Yeah.
Why did you go into optometry? And the ones that tend to do the best and that I just really do well in our office are the ones that say, well, I think it's going to be a good profession. I think it's going to give me I'm going to be satisfied out of it. It's going to, we're not going to make billions, but it's going to give my family a good quality of a standard of living. I didn't want to be outside all day with a shovel and a hammer. And not to knock shovels and hammers, but they're honest. They're saying what they believe. I think the ones that I've struggled with are they can't be honest with themselves, and making money feels like a bad thing. Making money feels like a dirty, and I love that optometry is not allowed to use the word sales, which is something I also learned from you because in a very positive way, you're always selling, right? You're always trying to read people and help them understand what they need. Whether it's an employee, working with a patient. I'm sure the same with your clients, and selling not into trying to get them something they don't need, but helping them understand what they do need and putting things in the terms that relate to them.
Yeah, the trust factor is huge,
Yeah.
and that it's actually, I think it's more important of what you just said as far as, don't sell them things they don't need. I mean, there's so many times where I'm not going to change something because the patient doesn't need it. The way I tell clients too is like, when you're controlling your practice, you treat it as if your your mom or your dad, your brother, sister, your wife, your husband are in that chair. What would you do in that situation? And when you operate that way, I mean, you're never going to lose,
No.
ever.
Nope.
That's always going to come back to you, and that's the kind of relationships that we've kind of built over time. And the sales and stuff will come just with trust, but you have to earn that trust in the beginning, especially as a cold start, you got a lot of time on your hands. You don't have a lot of cash, you got a lot of time. And so you got time to talk to these people about what they do and have a general interest in their children and their activities. And we have every one of them write a note after every exam. Every exam. They write the actual handwritten note. Believe it or not, that's still like around. Aaron, I don't know if you
Yeah.
know that, like not texting back and saying, "Hey, thanks for coming in," but it makes an impact because no one does that anymore.
No.
You handwrite a note and say, Ms. Smith, thanks so much for coming in. Good luck on your trip to Mexico. Hope you love the new suns. And looking forward to seeing you next year. If anyone else would love to support a small business that needs eye care, by all means, please send them in. So it makes a huge impact. I still have patients that I still have patients that come back and remind me of all those times that we sent all those things and having Santa at the office and all those. It's just building the community.
Oh yeah. No, being part of a community. And no, I agree with you. The notes are important. My struggle with notes is my handwriting is so bad that it's hard to slow it down. When I travel, I send my kids postcards from wherever I'm going. And I've been asked to write less on the postcards because it's too hard for them to figure out how to read and decipher the language. So now it's more of a just, hey, Dad, hi, thinking about you. But they keep them all. It's as silly as that little note is in the back. I was cleaning up my daughter's room and, going through it to see if there's anything in there that she's not supposed to have, and found a whole stack of all the postcards that she's gotten, which is really cool that it meant that much
cool
for them to hang on to them.
I hope you weren't writing in cursive because they don't know how to read that, by the way. They stopped like teaching that like 10 years ago. So we'll have clients that'll come up with like these sign ideas from, they'll source the internet and come up with these sign ideas, and then the sign will be in cursive. I'm like, you realize that the generation 10 years ago, they stopped.
Yeah.
This generation is not even going to be able to read what your sign says. I mean, you're going to need to put it in some kind of a text. I mean, that's how much things have changed. I mean, cursive is gone. Like, they have to teach now kids how to sign their names in a unique way instead of just, block letters. It's pretty wild. My kids are 11 and 13 and I see it. And if I wrote them something in cursive, at least I could, show it to my wife, and it's about the kids and they wouldn't be able to read it. It might as well be in another language.
Exactly. Yeah. Cursive and stick shift cars.
Yeah.
So,
that's too bad though.
That is. Even working on cars anymore. They're computers with wheels now.
Yeah, that's a DIY thing that people used to have skills with, and now you just bring it in and be like, "What's wrong with it?" I don't know, it's broken. Fix it.
The light came on and it dinged. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I don't know. No one changes oil anymore.
So I'm curious with the young cold starts that you're coming up or that you're working with, because a lot of, especially early on in practice ownership, it's a lot of DIY. I mean, I don't know how many toilets I've fixed and hinges I've had to replace and whatnot. What are you seeing with this group as far as a willingness to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty?
Yeah, I think that's a knock on millennials. I think it's unfair. I have some of the most impressive clients you wouldn't believe. And it's not always about, fixing toilets. And but sometimes you have to do that, and they're always like, well, when do I hire an office manager? Or, I need to be looking for an office manager. I'm like, you are the office manager. I go, you're hiring an optician, and you're also going to hire a part-time individual to answer phones when you're there seeing patients. And, otherwise you're the janitor, head bottle washer, you're going to be the one that's taking out the trash. You're going to be the one that is cleaning the equipment and is performing most of the pre-testing, and sometimes answering your own phone. There was a time where I was answering my own phone, and like patients were endeared to that for a little while. And then finally, like after you're like, why are you answering your own phone? It's like, you could be doing something better. It's like, well, so-and-so is sick and that's just what had to be done. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool things you can, do yourself. Like, as far as painting the practice and stuff, we have a lot of people that have real handy family members that come in and help and things like that. The one thing, that's dangerous though, is you can't be out there. I made so many mistakes. Both Eric and I ridiculous. We negotiated 3 leases without a real estate broker. We didn't ask for TI on any of them. Had no idea that TI was even possible. Left tens and tens of thousands on the table for vultures just to kind of take advantage of us. I bought, again, equipment from, overseas, and because I didn't have any money, and realized that wasn't such a great idea because I only have one exam lane. It breaks down and there's nothing else you can do. I bought an OCT that caught on fire, dude. It caught on fire. And I spent, it was used. I couldn't afford a new one. And so the insurance company's like, it's not insured, buddy. This is a used piece of equipment. And my agent's like, well, what if you can prove there was a lightning fire? Was there lightning that day when it happened? Like maybe the lightning shot through and somehow fried it and had it catch on fire. I literally went back and called Tom Skilling. I don't know who that is. If he's like a weatherman in Chicago, he's
Uh-huh.
like a legend, to
Yeah.
try to find out if there was a lightning storm on that day that I could somehow coordinate an insurance claim with. And there wasn't. I lost 40 grand. Uh, Eric bought an edger. It was awesome. Eric bought an edger. I mean, you're laughing. You worked on a bunch of them. I mean, they're
Uh-huh.
complicated pieces of equipment, but he
Yeah.
thought he got a great deal. It was installed, and then he had a problem, with the tracer, and then it was just edging a little bit too small. And he comes in, and he had to call a technician who he knew, and the guy comes in, and he's like, "Hey, this edger's from Walmart? It's got over 100,000 cuts on it."
Wow.
And it was like rolling back like a 57 Chevy odometer. You could do
Uh,
that on the outside, but you couldn't do it internally. So this guy knew. So Eric bought a used edger that was on its like last legs and thought the thing was brand new because it had a new cover on it. And we just made so many mistakes. And those are the things that we want to avoid by just working with quality individuals and making sure that they have quality equipment at the best prices. And that way, we can make sure that you stay open because you don't have a backup plan. Your lane goes down. That's bad news. You're not going to be
yeah.
trial frame refracting in there. I'll tell you that. So
No, no. There's certainly places to cut costs and places not to.
yeah,
And I mean, Lori Sorensen, one of my other mentors, and I love her. She references this. I'm sure she stole it from someone else, but the definition of an expert is someone who's made more mistakes than you have. And
yeah,
I think that's important to learn. I think the stories are funny, but they're learning lessons as well. And because there's certainly things that I think that you could overpay on, but using professionals appropriately, lawyers to help negotiate lease, somebody
yeah,
who's
for
done
sure.
it before, making sure you've got somebody that understands employment law to write your associate contracts and different types of things, because a little bit of money on the front end is going to save you a lot more on the back end. Whether it's the right equipment or setting yourself up properly for the business. I have no problems painting a room, but I'm not going to do electrical. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
and you
you don't want me to
shouldn't.
burn the building down. No.
No, no, but those experts are really important. And now I don't even know what the title of this podcast is, to tell you the truth. But I mean, if there's anybody listening that is a new student that is just even coming out and thinking about just going into cold starting or into another practice, I mean, you really got to look at that contract. I mean, non-compete clauses are killer, and there's a lot of corporations out there that are putting just unbelievable restrictive covenants in there that just really cause a lot of problems. You don't want to have to go to court over that. So you need to have a lawyer and an expert, look at that. I mean, Eric has been doing this at the college now for, over a decade in terms of advising on contracts, but we still always have it, vetted by a lawyer to make sure that everything in each jurisdiction is going to go through properly. And that's really important, whether you're getting your first job, because it could, then parlay that into your next move, whether you decide to buy into a practice or whether you decide
Mhm.
to cold start a practice.
Yep. No, definitely. And I don't know yet what the name of the podcast is. By the time people are
Yeah.
listening to it, we'll have come up with something. The
Okay.
but good conversation. So we're getting a little close to that hour mark. What advice on so two questions I'm going to ask. One is, what advice would you give somebody who's getting close to that fourth year, looking at not sure where I want to go? You and I are both pro private practice. I think there's a place for all different types of optometry, but we found that private practice is where we think we give the best care. And so the first question is going to be about the young grads coming out or recent grads. The second one is going to be geared towards more like guys like you and I who are looking to bring in an associate doc, potentially have them become an owner down the line. What should we be looking for? What should our attitude be towards some of these young grads coming out, and how best to engage them? Because if we think they're going to, do the same thing we did, we're mistaken. It's a different world in a sense of, just how we approached life. And so I'm curious on your perspective on both those questions.
I mean, those are great questions. So, I unfortunately, I think, the first question that you asked about, what to do if you're a fourth year looking to figure out what you want to do. Unfortunately, I would say you're too late. You're too late to find your dream job out of school. I think honestly, you should start in year two. I know it's overwhelming. The first year just getting through optometry school, it's tough. They make it that way on purpose. But know what you want to do, and then line up your externships based on your current interests. Because you might not know if you want to go into, pediatrics, if you want to go into low vision or advanced care or neuro. It's a very, optometry is, it's incredibly advanced at this stage compared to when I was in school and the laws that we had to pass to get where we're at right now. But start a second year, and again, spend the time at the bar to make those connections. I cold called every private practitioner around me, even though I knew my uncle was going to have a position for me part time. I mean, Aaron, I was working at the prison on Sunday. I mean, even when I was, with you, I don't even know if you knew that. I was working in like a medium security prison on Sunday to just make more money on the side to support, the private practice. And, those jobs I came out with from meeting people politically, throughout, my time at ICO. And so started second, third year. And then the answer to the second question, as far as we're seeing a huge problem with this. And it's really sad because, I mean, some of the legends in our profession that have really, built the profession in terms of their political activism and what they've done, it's as far as pave the way for the new generation of optometrists that are in some of these rural communities we're seeing their practices just close down. I mean, it's really, really sad. And, we would love to be able to find a match there, to get those individuals a match with someone that is from their, hometown, or, to find someone that's willing to come in there, because those guys kill it. I mean, they absolutely kill it. They love it. They're pillars of the community. I mean, I don't have to tell you this. I mean, I think you had a horse. I think you had a horse hitch in front of your practice for a while, and,
Yeah.
they love, the connection that they have in the community. And the doctors that want to do that are going to make an incredible amount of money, but they're also going to lead an incredible life there and really kind of change the town in some cases. And so what I would tell a lot of those older doctors is, one, make the connections with schools around the country and let them know where you're at and what your trajectory is. Don't look at a year out. Look 3 or 4 years down the road. There were times when I was even thinking of, if I were in one of those practices, I would basically act as almost like the GI Bill, or do what the military does. I'd be happy to right now pay a doc that isn't even graduated yet, that I believe in, that I know either interviewed with me or did an externship for me, or, along the way has, worked in the office like you have. I would pay a portion of their tuition for, first, second, third, fourth year in order for them to guarantee that they would work for me, coming out of school. I mean, there's ways to do that, I believe. And I think a lot of these private practitioners need to start thinking a little bit outside the box, because you do have to plan for the future. And, in order for private optometry to continue its trajectory, it's still by far the best way to practice and the most lucrative way to practice. You really have to think outside the box. And the younger generation here, more exposure that you have to them to tell your story, I think is going to be better in the long term rather than scrambling a year before retirement.
Yep. Absolutely wonderful sound advice. I think both those pieces of advice are huge. And I would just, add on and maybe reiterate, when you're going to the society events or the expos or academy or the vision source exchanges, get outside your comfort zone. And if you're a student, hang out with the students, but also hang out with the docs that are there, right? We were all in your shoes. We can all lament over taking boards and have a drink to that. And if you're a established doc, be open and inviting to the younger docs coming in, because it's scary when, I remember the big names and I remember the first time you took me out having a beer with a couple of the professors at school, and I was intimidated out of my mind. We're going out with who? And then recognizing that they're real people, that they were cool, right? They're not just the guy on stage, who seems like they know everything, but they're people, and they've got stories, and they're funny, and they could all drink me under the table. but that was a huge eye-opening moment for me, and I grew up around doctors, so it was just we're all part of the same big family and just helping each other, but having that personal communication and personal interaction, I think is huge.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
Very cool. So, Bob, we'll put your contact info in the for Eye Care Advisors and for you in the show notes. But if somebody's looking to get a hold of you, find out a little bit more about opening a cold start practice, whether you're out of school, maybe you've been employed for 30 years, and now you want to step out and kind of do it on your own. We've seen it all. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, first I would encourage people to do their due diligence. I mean, there's a lot of great people out there that are really providing some really sound, non-biased advice that I think, just peel back one or two layers of the onion to go and investigate. This is investment in yourself, but it's going to be the most important investment you make after your collegiate career. And so, one, do your due diligence. We're not for everybody. There's a lot of other, firms out there that do different things. We know cold starts and we know them very, very well. That's what we do great. You can look us up on eyecareadvisors.com. That's with the letter I. So ICARE advisors with an O.com. And then you can email me anytime with any questions that you have too. It's just Dr. Steinmetz at eyecareadvisors.com. I'm happy to answer any questions, whether it's from students looking to go down this path or individuals that are also looking at alternative options, from their corporate career or from a practice that may be in a group and want to branch out on their own. Happy to help.
Awesome. And I'll put links to both those in the notes as well. Bob, thanks for taking a chance at me as a student who leaves their backpack in places, trying to make a good first impression on interviews. But really, first and foremost, being a friend, and second, being a mentor. We didn't even get into the back and forth, positive, discussions and sometimes even debates that we have that I learned a ton from. And it's humbling to know that, you're reaching out to me asking for advice and thoughts on things. And I like the opportunity to be able to do the same back with you, and really appreciate what you do for the profession, because it was fantastic for me as a child growing up in it. It's been fantastic for me as a dad raising a family in the profession. And so I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience with others so they can also have that experience, that lifestyle.
Well, Rex, it's been a pleasure. Really, it's incredible, to watch your career and what you've accomplished and still have so much more to go. So, really thank you for having me on here, eventually. I appreciate it. And, hopefully somebody got something out of this rambling nonsense over the last hour, but I definitely appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And if I don't see you before the holidays, have a wonderful holiday season with your family, and I look forward to catching up next time we can in person.
You too, buddy.
Thanks, man.